Well, welcome back, and thank you for joining me again as we continue the discussion from Genesis chapter 50. In our main study, we explored Joseph's powerful forgiveness, Joseph's burial in Canaan, and Joseph's prophetic hope in God's promises. But there's still so much more to unpack. Layers of historical richness, covenantal echoes, and deep theology hidden in the background of this final chapter. Let's dig deeper. 1. Jacob's burial and the Egyptian royal funeral structure. Genesis 50 gives us the most detailed description of any burial in the book of Genesis. And it's not just a family affair, it's a royal funeral in an Egyptian context. The embalming period lasts 40 days, matching known Egyptian embalming practices from the Middle Kingdom period and onward. The mourning period of 70 days matches what was reserved for pharaohs in some dynasties. What's significant here is that Jacob is treated with pharaoh-like honor. Why does this matter? Because it shows that the covenant people, though exiled from their land, are not forgotten by God, nor despised by those in power. In fact, they are elevated. The journey to the land of Canaan includes Pharaoh's court, Egyptian officials, and military units. It's not a hidden, shameful event. It's national. The Egyptians call the site Abel Mizraim, the mourning of Egypt. This hints at the broader biblical theme. When God's people walk in obedience, even foreign empires recognizes God's blessing on them. And historically, this reveals how deeply Joseph was integrated into Egyptian state while remaining spiritually distinct. Burial in the cave of Machpelah alongside Abraham and Isaac reasserts that identity. It reminds us, we can live faithfully in foreign systems, but our burial and our hope belongs to God's promises. Number 2, Abel, Mizraim, and cross-cultural memory. Let's talk about Abel Mizraim for a moment. This place name is unusual. It fuses Hebrew Abel, which is mourning, with Mizraim, Egypt, implying a site permanently marked by its international mourning event. Now, scholars believe this name reflects a cross-cultural memory, a moment where the lives of Jacob's family intersected with Egypt's national consciousness. In ancient Near Eastern literature, events like large royal funerals would be etched into local folklore. It's very likely the mourning procession was remembered not just by the Israelites, but also by the Canaanites and even the Egyptians, becoming part of the shared memory of the region. Theologically, this reinforces that God's covenantal story is not private. It is visible to nations. This anticipates a repeated biblical theme. God chooses a people not to isolate them, but to witness through them. The mourning of Abel Mizraim becomes a foreshadowing of how Israel's story will impact Egypt again, most dramatically in the Exodus. And 3, divine providence and moral agency in Genesis 50:20. Now, we already touched on this briefly in the main study, but it's worth going deeper here. Genesis 50:20 is arguably the most profound statement of divine providence in Genesis. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. The word used here, hashav, is used in both human intent and divine intent. This is not a case of God fixing what went wrong. It's a case of God working through the very intentions of men without violating their moral agency. This is theological gold. It affirms 2 truths. 1, humans are responsible for their actions, and 2, God is sovereign over outcomes. This paradox sits at the very heart of much of biblical theology. We see it later in the cross of Christ. Men intended evil, God intended salvation. Peter says as much in Acts 2:23. This man was handed over to you by God's deliberate plan and foreknowledge, and you, with the help of wicked men, put him to death. Now Joseph becomes an early example of this principle in action. The evil done to him becomes the very mechanism through which God preserves life. For your audience, this opens up big questions. How does God use suffering? Can betrayal be transformative? What does it mean to trust God's purpose when we can't see it? And number 4, Joseph's age at the number 110. Joseph dies at the age of 110, a symbolic number in Egyptian culture. In Egyptian literature, 110 was considered to be the ideal lifespan, associated with a wise, successful, and honored man. For example, Agamemnon, a famous vizier, is said to have lived 110 years, and it was a badge of distinction. Genesis subtly plays into this. Joseph, though a Hebrew, ends his life receiving a full honor of Egyptian blessing. Yet what does Joseph ask? Carry my bones up from here. That's powerful. Joseph isn't Egyptian in spirit. His body may be honored in Egypt, but his heart belongs to the land of promise. This is a bold statement of hope in the resurrection and redemption of God's people. This is echoed again in Exodus 13:19, when Moses fulfills that promise and carries Joseph's bones out. And again in Hebrews 11:22, where this act is remembered as an act of faith. Joseph's last wish is a protest against assimilation. He's saying, this is not the end of my story, God is coming. Now 5, why in Genesis in a coffin? Let's not overlook this final image. So Joseph died and he was placed in a coffin in Egypt. It's a striking end to Genesis. The book begins with creation and ends with a coffin. From life to death, from paradise to Egypt. But this coffin is not the end. It is a promise waiting to be fulfilled. This is the genius of Genesis. The story is open-ended. It doesn't resolve everything. Instead, it expects something. It anticipates deliverance. That coffin becomes a symbol of faith in delay. The Israelites in Egypt would walk past Joseph's coffin for generations. Every time they did, they would remember, God will surely come to your aid. It is the first spark of Exodus. The bones of Joseph become the anchor of memory and hope. Now for some final thoughts. So where does that leave us? Genesis ends with both grief and hope, with death, but also with expectation. It reminds us that our faith is not just about our current chapter. It's about trusting the author to finish the story in his time. Joseph teaches us to trust the long arc of God's purposes, to forgive boldly, to live with integrity, and to hope even in exile. I want to thank you so much for staying with me for this final discussion on Genesis. What a journey this book has been, from the breath of life in Eden to the coffin of hope in Egypt. It's been an honor to walk through it with you. If this discussion opened something new for you, or if there's an insight that you've had that I didn't bring up, I'd love to hear it. Please share it in the comments. Your voice matters in this conversation. And I just want to say thank you for your time, for your heart, and for the hunger for truth. You've made this study richer. We're not done. We're just turning the page, and I'd love to have you stay with me as we open the book of Exodus. Until then, may you carry the hope of Joseph's bones with you, that God will come to your aid. See you in Exodus.